Welcome to Connect, a program where we're exploring our connections with our community. And we hope you at home will make connections with the three people I have here as my guests, and I'll introduce them to you. And that you will find their stories and their work as important as they do. Let me introduce to you Dana Bagshaw from the Santa Cruz Climate Action Network.
That's right.
Grant Black from Sunrise Movement. And LaFlora Cunningham-Walsh from Green New Deal. So why don't we start first getting to know you a little bit. Dana, what brought you to Santa Cruz and especially the Santa Cruz Climate Action Network?
Right.
How did you get here?
I came here for retirement. I was in San Jose and graduated from San Jose State. And then I was in England for 18 years. And then when I moved back to California, we decided on Santa Cruz.
Good.
And within the first year, I helped form, was one of the founding members of Climate Action Network. So it started with the big march for the Paris talks. And when it was over, we said, now what? So we've been working on the now what ever since, but things are really starting to get exciting now.
Great.
Yeah.
What about you, Grant?
Well, I came here this past year for school. I am attending UCSC as a junior studying politics and economics. And my time here has been filled with a good amount of organizing as well, because these are tumultuous times. Climate change is upon us. It's getting closer sooner than we expected. So not only do I attend school, but I help the community organize with the Sunrise Movement, as well as on campus with student groups. And then we work to apply pressure to local politicians, state politicians, as well as just engaging the community in a conversation that we should all be having.
Excellent. What about you, Flora?
Well, I'm a Santa Cruz local, so I was really blessed to be born in such a beautiful and committed community. I've been really involved in a lot of different aspects of activism my whole life through around here. It's very fertile ground for that sort of thing. I've been involved in education, activism, environmental issues, women's issues for a long time. But honestly, I had taken a step back for quite some time, almost a decade, because it's been a real struggle to support oneself while also being so committed to these beliefs. And that is why I'm so inspired to be reinvigorated and to be part of this movement again, and where I really see the Green New Deal as an entry point for those of us who really believe in these things, to help create an economy to keep those beliefs going so that we can push policy while making sure we're also taking care of ourselves and our community. And I would say I'm picking up on the spirit that seems to be growing as we're all here right now, and I'm just so happy to make these connections and join a team.
Right. Well, I think you have similar feelings as we have. I really got inspired when I saw both of you at a workshop about the Green New Deal. So why don't we talk a little bit about what the Green New Deal is and how it is inspiring and how it's taken, people started talking about the Green New Deal probably in 2007 and then what happened in the last few months is just incredible. So why don't we start off with either you or Grant?
Well, as you said, 2007 is when Thomas Friedman, the economist, brought this up and kind of coined the phrase. Although, as we were discussing before we started taping, that this has been something that's been, the groundswell has been growing for a long time. The green movement, many of us here in Santa Cruz, I for one grew up in a solar-powered house, and so this has been something that I've been waiting for quite a long time. And now it really seems that with the state of climate and the community's awareness of the state of climate, as well as I think that economic concerns that have really affected particularly my generation, millennials, I think that it's a sink or swim time for not only the environment but for the economy as a whole. And I'm really excited that particularly Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has really put a face on this movement and bringing forth a congressional plan and leadership to bring this forth. And I feel like Grant has a little more info on what.
Yeah, that's exactly right, LaFlora. The economic necessity for us to reorient our economy to be carbon-free and free of fossil fuels is dire. We need to do it now. We need to do it as soon as possible. And it seems a bit ambitious, but with crisis comes opportunity. So what we have here is we have the opportunity to create millions of good-paying jobs. We have the opportunity to bring in communities and historically disadvantaged communities to help with issues along the lines of poverty, of wealth distribution, of creating a job where it's not only a living wage, but a wage where you can actually raise a family and be comfortable, where you can actually meet those sustainable goals for yourself while also stopping climate change, because it's a twofold task.
Now, you mentioned the IPCC. Tell our audience, what is the IPCC and what did they do?
So the IPCC is a United Nations group of the world's leading climate scientists. And periodically they release reports on the state of affairs of the world's climate. And this last year, at the end of 2018, they released a rather alarming report that said we have 12 years in order to stop stop climate from getting to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Once we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius, we start seeing a climate crisis. We start seeing calamities. We start seeing climate refugees. We start seeing food scarcity. So this group of scientists and their largely conservative report gives us 12 years. And with that in mind, the time to act is now. The time to act is we have to do it. There's not really another option anymore. So it's...
Now, you're talking about climate refugees. Where do these people come from? What is their problem that they have to leave where they live?
So a climate refugee is not an actually recognized refugee in the eyes of the United Nations at this time. However, a climate refugee would probably be along the lines of someone that is fleeing from a place that is either torn apart due to resource scarcity that has led to conflict through warfare or through that kind of stuff, or through simply having their land and their home destroyed by climate change, like rising sea levels in the Pacific and all of our oceans, or just the increase of arid land we're seeing across the world. So the lack of ability to be able to grow food. People are going to be losing their homes, their ancestral homes, and they're going to have to find new places to go. And right now the world doesn't know how to deal with migration, so it's going to pose issues.
It seems to me it's already happening. I mean, they call it drought, but there's a lot of displaced people. And when there's less land, then there's more battles over the land. And here in Santa Cruz, we've got the sea level rising from the ocean, and then we've got the fires up in the mountains, so we're just being squeezed. So yes, it's a dire future if we don't do something fast.
Yeah.
A dire future if we don't do something fast. But what I see in my communities and the circles that I interact with, people of my generation, and really frankly of every generation, is that there really is an opportunity for good ideas. We just haven't had the structural support to make those ideas happen, to take them on a larger scale. Of course, what we mentioned before about the necessity of the timeline and kind of putting pressure on us enables us to actually take those actions, and it's revealed to the people who are in power that it is necessary for them to start taking actions, as well as also revealed to the community at large. This is something that even if you're just a casual observer of the news, you can pick up on it. You can see that there are wildfires coming closer and closer to our homes, and that something must be done. And I know people have very good ideas about what to do. We need to give them structural support from both the national level right down here to the city level to make sure that we are enabling those ideas to grow and thrive and really tackle climate change in our communities as well as the world at large.
Now, you work with city and county. Are you getting any results from them?
We've got some really good results. And on January the 29th, we recently got the County Board of Supervisors to do an emergency mobilization resolution for climate. And that was preceded by one with the city in December 2018, before the election, which we're very proud of because it shows that it was unanimous and it was a bipartisan thing. So,
It was just before the city council changed
right,
over.
just before the change.
I think even the same day, wasn't it? Kind of?
Or maybe just a day or two before. Yeah, it was sort of the legacy that, and the mayor signed off on it. David, it was sort of what he left behind for us, and we were very excited about that.
And so, you said you get excited. You know, I like your inspirational idea of, you know, things are changing, and that, you know, the election of 2018 made such a huge difference. Because, so we had the election in November, and then we had the IPCC report, and did I read it correctly that within a week of the election, that people went into Speaker Pelosi's office and said, we need, you know, a committee. And is this where the Sunrise Movement started? Is that, am I correct about that?
This is not where the Sunrise Movement started.
Oh,
we've been around since 2017. However, our occupation and our sit-in at Speaker Pelosi's office was the mark of that uptick in events. With this new Congress, we see a lot more representation from communities that historically have not had representation in the federal legislature. And with that comes the opportunity to bring democracy and representation, as well as ideas that are conducive to bringing these people out of poverty and conducive to these ideas that actually are reflective in making America a better place. So the Sunrise Movement, seeing the necessity of action with the IPCC report, seeing this change in American politics, decided that it was a time to act. And they occupied Pelosi's office. 50 of us were arrested. And then started the movement to get the Green New Deal to become a national priority, to put climate change at the forefront of the debate for the people in office. Because quite frankly, it should be at the forefront of the debate. What anyone running for president in 2020 should be talking about climate change and the necessity to deal with it on a national level. Not just acknowledging that it exists. No. Actually saying we need to take action and here's what we're going to do.
So, and locally, we joined forces with you and we invaded Panetta's office.
Yeah, we did.
So that was fun, and it's just great to be energized with the young people because that's who we're doing it for.
You know, I did a little research on the internet and found that you know, at the end of November there were 18 Democrats who you know, detailed a national industrial economic mobilization plan, and then the draft, you know, is going to be released in 2020. And then within a couple of weeks, you know, there were 300 local elected officials in 40 states that endorsed a letter, you know, supporting that. And then they did a poll where 82% of the people had not heard of the Green New Deal, but that there was strong bipartisan support for it. And I think that's what you're representing here too. I mean, you're talking young people being concerned. I mean, young people of all walks of life. And young people who say it's our future. Politics comes later. It is our future. And so, of course, you know, we said, we agree with you because our lives have been like working towards peace and the environment and all that. And I am so pleased to see this you know, swell of people. And then these principles that the Sunrise movement has. I mean, you're really talking about involving the community, you know, talking to our communities. We are people from all walks of life. We want to stop climate change and create millions of good-paying jobs. And we need to talk a little bit more about that in more detail. You know, of course, nonviolent in word and deed. We need to tell our stories.
That's the part I found really so inspiring and very different from what has been presented before. And I think that's really part of the evolution of where we are now and what will propel this movement forward is the fact that it's not a one-way conversation. That here, the fact we want to know how it is affecting you, how your struggles, how your economic pitfalls have really stopped you from making the environmental choices that you want, from leading the life. You know, if you're struggling, you can't make the best necessarily economic choices for the climate. You have to make the choices that make sure that you have food on the table. Mm-hmm. And I think that being able to listen to other people's stories, I'm particularly interested in, again, the people who are not necessarily already involved. And how can we hear how, as you know, a mother of two who's got 2 kids and a full-time job, how we can help create a society that works better for her and protects the environment for her future generations.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And I think that's where Sunrise and the idea of the Green New Deal really has a lot of its strengths, is that it is representative, is that it goes into communities and asks people, what are the problems you've been facing? How do you think they should be addressed? What are the solutions? Come to the table and talk to us. I read a thing a few days ago where it's a difference between the grassroots and the grass tops. And Sunrise has to be the grassroots. It has to bring the people in from the communities and make sure they have a seat at the table. They have to make sure that they have a voice in the future, whereas historically they weren't offered that privilege.
So give a little bit more example of what do people tell you? What is their situation, and how do you structure it that they A, can express it, and B, can work towards a solution? What do you do?
So the Green New Deal is evolving, and Sunrise is evolving rather quickly, and these questions are currently being addressed. What I've seen with Sunrise do is they've opened the conversation, and they've already changed the actual policy language a lot to include Indigenous communities, to include labor, to bring these people to the table that should be at the table. And it is done through ways of there's a speaking tour that's currently going on. And it's not just going to be a speaking tour, it's also going to be a listening tour, where it's going to be, what do you see as needs to be changed? And coming to the table and bringing forth your thoughts and opinions on it, and your real life lived experiences is essential in order to create a comprehensive democratic method moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's just networking and having conversations with your friends, being able to talk about it without feeling like people are going to throw tomatoes at you. One of the things I've done is organized a small group called Bus by Choice, people who are willing to give up riding in a car and take the bus. And we had a trip just last Sunday, and we were just having a conversation, and she said, well, none of my friends are going to give up a car. They're just not going to do it. She says, but young people are, they're going to do it. And I said, yes, and we've got to give them the infrastructure so that they can do that. Mm-hmm. So, it's just having conversations like that that I think brings everyone, make it an open subject again.
Well, one of the things that I pretty much hear from people outside of the general movement we're all part of is basically economic woes. I think a lot of the people I know would make different choices if they could afford to make different choices. It's really hard when you're struggling. And that's why I'm so inspired by the Green New Deal, the idea of creating jobs that are good paying. That means that instead of having 50% of your income go to rent, maybe only 25% of your income goes to rent because you have a much better paying job. So now you're able to use that extra 25% of your income to, say, upgrade to a hybrid car, or to give yourself a little more time so that you can take public transportation, buy yourself a nice bike, take your kids out to a park instead of needing to be at work those extra hours. I think that there's a lot of opportunity, particularly, again, if we create this green new businesses, we'll also increase the tax base within both the local areas, state areas, national areas. With those tax dollars, we can help subsidize childcare for people so that people can work good jobs and know that their kids are taken care of in a good location. We can afford light rail and other forms of low fossil fuel emitting or no fossil fuel emitting transportation. That's, we could have something like that in Santa Cruz quickly if we increased our tax base, as well as looking at the budgets to how we can spend our money in how we can keep that money green. You know, money's already green. We need to keep it green.
Right, that's a nice thing. Now, would the Monterey Bay Power Company, would that be an example of creating jobs and taking care of the environment? I know your organization is kind of promoting that, isn't it?
Well, we're excited about it, yes,
Yeah.
because it's a community thing, and they have made an option of making funds available for green businesses and new ventures, and we're excited about that. Yeah.
That was a really citizen-led effort as well, which is the part that's inspiring for me. Monterey is a little bit different than Santa Cruz. I feel like when they get on board with something, they really get on board. But it's so exciting to see that that's something that happened. It's the end of January. Just 2 days ago, January 28th, 2019, PG&E filed for bankruptcy in the state of California. Now, I see that as a perfect opportunity to have more public input into our electrical system. Mm-hmm. Almost everybody is involved at PG&E in one way or another. Even if you're off-grid at home, we are on-grid right here. And so it's very important that we as a community say, we would like to have some more control. We would like some more choices. We want to see investment made in greening up our public utilities because we are out of time for doing anything else.
Right. Yeah, and of course, the Monterey, I think it's called the Monterey Bay Power Company, I think it's called.
Community power.
Community power, yeah. Mm-hmm. And, and I know that the aide for Bruce McPherson, she worked really hard on that. And it has taken years, but it's there. We can, but you still will have to do with PG&E because of its infrastructure. But the energy comes from renewable sources. And the other thing I wanted to ask is the sunrise movement. You talked a little bit about Ocasio-Cortez, and we talked about that it started before. But what makes you think, two of you, maybe even you, why is it going in such acceleration? Is there anything in particular, or is there a mood swing in the country?
I think that it's almost as if a critical mass of consciousness has been reached. Because I think there was a lot of people who were interested in this subject before, but it's been like a magnet. It suddenly was like the magnet was switched on, and suddenly we're all together. People who'd been working on things like the Keystone XL pipeline, who'd been working on solar power, who'd been working on local climate action. Now suddenly we can all see each other. And Sunrise Movement, just as their name implies, has shed some light so that we can all see each other and join forces together. I am new to Sunrise, and I have been so inspired to see that they have put down what is in my heart into their movement and trying to really direct that at legislation and community building.
And they're using social media such as Facebook, meetings around the country, which is really inspiring. I don't do Facebook, but I just think, gosh, they're reaching so many people. And you also mentioned about labor. How did labor get excited about the Green New Deal?
So the unions and labor are still working out their role in the Green New Deal. However, there is opportunity here to create all these jobs. There is opportunity to create these good paying jobs. And there's opportunity for these workers to unionize, or in the past there may have been restrictions along those lines. But going back to the catalyzation of this movement and this time right now I feel it's just like, in the words of Dr. King, it's the fierce urgency of now. Now is the time to act, and through the mobilization, through social media and through people power, it's becoming much more evident that these reports that may inspire apathy are actually inspiring compassion in people. And people are not feeling that they are disenfranchised and don't have a voice, but they're feeling that they can actually come forward, have their voice be heard, and make a change. And the unions, I feel, play a pretty important role in this because they are a huge lobby. They have a lot of power. And what needs to happen is workers' rights need to be prioritized, and the rights of our climate need to be prioritized. And the youth, our future, is at stake. And if we don't come together here in solidarity with one another, then it's looking pretty bleak if we don't
it
act.
seems to me that we also needed a leader, someone that we could get really excited about. And AOC seems to be the person. I mean, climate mobilization says we have to halt doing business as usual, politics as usual. We've got to do an about face, change our thinking, and, just someone who had enough courage to stand up there and say these things. I get a big kick out of her. She's fantastic.
Great. She's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, what I feel like she represents for me is I look at her and see myself, right? I think that is what really if there's something in it that has brought young people to the table, it's looking at it and seeing yourself and going, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I see the necessity of it. There is no time to waste. For me, there is no other option. And I feel like that, when I hear her speak, that is what I hear. There are no other options. It is come together and do a Green New Deal or...
Yeah. And of course, Sunrise Movement was smart in pulling her in.
Yeah, well, I think that was kind of like almost an organic relationship that developed there. There was a lot of like mutual values that we share. But in terms of leadership, AOC is at the forefront, and we love her, and she's doing so much with like bringing this to Congress and changing the debate. But we have to extend these demands to everyone else. Like just on Sunday, I was at Kamala Harris's bid for presidency in Oakland. And the movement was there, and she spoke about climate change, but she did not mention the Green New Deal. Within 48 hours, she came out and she supported it. So
it looks like we have way more things to talk about. I have lots more questions, and talking about the critics and all that, but we don't have time for that today. So I want to thank Dana, I want to thank Grant, and I want to thank LaFlora, and I want to thank you at home for watching Connect, where we talked about the Green New Deal, Sunrise Movement, and the Santa Cruz Climate Action Network. Good night.